The sword may seem like an old-fashioned weapon nowadays, but to those who think that I say, haha, dost thou not knoweth of the majesty of thine blade? From katanas to Scottish broadswords, the variety of swords employed by some of our favourite characters can be quite staggering, and always lead to the most extra of encounters when compared to just your everyday average boring shootout. But when you live in a world filled to the brim with superpowered individuals, magic users, monsters, gods, and cosmic entities, a powerful blade can be more than effective than even the most skilled warrior, as we're currently seeing in X of Swords, where every X-Man has a sword. Yep, I love comics. But what are the most powerful comic swords of all? Let's find out, shall we? I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture Comics, and here are the 10 most powerful swords in comics history. Number 10. The Ebony Blade. You'd expect Excalibur's twin to be every bit as powerful as the famous sword from Arthurian legend, and mostly the Ebony Blade doesn't disappoint. Forged by Merlin from a goddamn meteorite, this sword can cut through anything, a feature most of the blades on this list actually have, reflect magical attacks and prevent its wielder from being killed. However, as cool as the Ebony Blade sounds, it also comes with a curse included, something its main user, Dane Whitman, aka the Black Knight, found out for himself, much to his misfortune. The sword, which seems to have a will of its own, can cause its wielder to go insane with bloodlust, which isn't ideal, especially if you happen to be a superhero. Oh well, still pretty cool though. Number 9. Excalibur. King Arthur's fabled blade is probably the most famous sword of all time, and for good reason. And while arguably its coolest comic book appearance came when Hellboy reclaimed the throne of England and led its undead armies against Nimue, it's still not the most powerful version of Excalibur seen in all of comics. Nope, that honor goes to the Marvel version of the mystical weapon, which is every bit as powerful as one might expect, being capable of killing any being, whether mortal, immortal, ethereal, or material, as well as grant its user invincibility and the ability to sense magic. No wonder Dr. Doom was so eager to get his hands on it, especially since Excalibur's scabbard can also make the wielder invulnerable. Number 8. The Muramasa Blade. Armed with 3 adamantium claws on each hand, Wolverine is probably the last guy you'd expect to be in need of a sword. Yet that's exactly what Logan commissioned from the swordsmith Muramasa shortly after the death of his wife, Itsu. Inspired by the real-life 16th century Japanese swordsmith Sengo Muramasa, the Marvel version of the historical figure forged a blade using a piece of Logan's soul, his blood, and his own desire for revenge. The end result was a weapon that could cut through anything at a molecular level, even through adamantium, as well as kill anything with a high healing factor. At one point, Logan even gave this particularly dangerous katana to Cyclops, to use it in case one day Logan completely lost his sanity and had to be put down. Number 7. The All Blades. Most mystical swords, no matter how much power they grant their wielders, usually come with a steep price. Either they're cursed and bring about all sort of misfortune upon their users, or they possess some sort of sentience that causes the wielders to lose their mind and become evil. However, not all swords corrupt their users, and some were even forged specifically to fight evil. Such is the case with the All Blades. The only pair of swords on this list, the All Blades were given to former Robin Jason Todd during the time he spent training with the All Cast. An ancient group of warrior monks devoted to fighting evil, they welcomed the would-be Red Hood shortly after his resurrection. The twin copper swords that Jason received are only effective against magical beings and can be summoned only in the presence of true evil. The All Blades can also be powered with the wielder's own blood. And even though the Red Hood's mostly known for being the only member of the Bat family to use guns, Jason has been forced on more than one occasion to resort to these mystical blades. Number 6. The Soul Sword. Many of the swords on this list have a strong connection to a particular wielder, and that is especially true in the case of the Soul Sword. Magic's weapon of choice is more than just a tool with magical powers. It's the very expression of her soul. Ilyana Rasputin forged this blade from her own soul and life force while being trapped in limbo by the sorcerer Belasco. Magic used the Soul Sword to fight off her captor, and as a result, whoever wields this weapon becomes the ruler of Limbo. Despite being so strongly connected to Ilyana, the Soul Sword has changed owners several times, most notably among them being the X-Men Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde. What makes this blade so particularly powerful though is that with each use, it becomes even stronger. When it was eventually returned to magic, the Soul Sword was capable of creating stepping discs in mid-air and summon an equally powerful set of mystical armor. It's also especially effective against magic. Number 5. The Soultaker Sword. A cursed blade forged by the infamous Muramasa, the DC version that is, the Soultaker Sword is capable, as its name suggests, to trap the souls of those it slays. If the idea of trapping your enemies for eternity in your own weapon isn't cool enough, the souls contained by this sword can also be consulted by the wielder, which helps, I imagine, if you're getting pretty lonely. Katana often seeks the guidance of her husband, Masao, who was killed and trapped in the blade by his own brother, Takeo, a member of the Yakuza. Tatsu used the Soultaker to exact revenge on the Yakuza and has since become the head of the Sword Clan, as her mystic sword is the totem weapon of this group. Number 4. The Godkiller Sword. A skilled fighter with a penchant for firearms and swords, Deathstroke's weapon of choice is the Deathstroke, a Scottish broadsword that at one point in time could even absorb energy attacks. However, the most powerful blade Slade Wilson has ever wielded, and also one of the coolest weapons in the DC universe, is the aptly named Godkiller Sword. Forged by the Greek blacksmith god himself, Hephaestus, the sword was given to Deathstroke as part of a contract to kill an enemy of the Olympian gods, the Titan Lapithus. The God Killer can strengthen its wielder, produce shock blasts, can be recalled to its owner, much like Thor's hammer Mjolnir, repair itself, and even read the minds of nearby gods. It's also semi-sentient, guiding the mind of its wielder and changing its shape according to its owner's will. Number 3. The Odin Sword. As the All-Father of Asgard and father to Avenger and God of Thunder Thor, Odin is one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. He's taken down many cosmic threats, waged plenty of wars, and seen entire worlds come and go, so it should come as no surprise that such an ancient and powerful god would have an arsenal of planet-shattering weapons at his disposal. Among them, there is a sword that carries his name, and that happens to be so powerful that it can end the universe by merely being unsheathed. The Odin Sword owes its apocalyptic power to its tragic history, having been forged from the cursed golden Nibelung ring. Despite being used twice, one time against the Celestials, the other against Kull, the god of fear, Odin usually uses this world-ending blade as a deterrent for potential enemies. It's often said that the best weapon is the one you never have to fire, or in this case, unsheath. Number 2. The Twilight Sword. When it comes to Asgardian weapons, most of them are capable of leveling entire cities, if not even destroy entire planets. Among them, the Odin Sword would seem the most powerful of them all, but much to the displeasure of the denizens of Asgard, a stronger blade is in the hands of the competition. At Ragnarok, the fire giant Surtur would bring about the complete destruction of Asgard, but in order to do just that, he would need a really big weapon. Enter the Twilight Sword, a giant blade capable of leveling the realm eternal. There are plenty of world-ending swords throughout the Marvel Universe, but what makes Surtur's signature weapon particularly powerful is the fact that it can also reform the universe itself. The Twilight Sword is a tool of destruction and creation, and it has already been used to cause several Ragnaroks over the centuries. And number 1. All Black, the Necro Sword. What happens when you combine most of the powers of the swords on this list and put them all into one giant single blade? You get All Black, the Necro Sword. A dark, shape-shifting blade that can even create semi-sentient beings, the Necro Sword can kill anything from suns and planets to the entire universe. But its main purpose is to kill godlike beings. That's exactly what Null, the god of the symbiotes, forged it for, after being disturbed by the first lights of creation. The moment he made it out of living darkness, Null used All Black to decapitate a Celestial, which also happens to be nowhere, as in the giant floating Celestial head that you see in Guardians of the Galaxy. However, what truly makes the Necro Sword such a dangerous blade is the fact that it can turn anyone, even a skinny mortal alien like Gore, into a cosmic-level killing machine. Gore the God Butcher may be its most famous wielder, but All Black has also been in the possession of Galactus, Ego, Loki, and Thor, who had the weapon purged from himself since it could drive him mad. The Force is with us. What Culture Star Wars is our brand new channel dedicated to all things Star Wars. We'll have all the usual lists, features, and news, plus there'll be ups and downs for all the latest shows and movies, and coverage on Star Wars novels and comics. Subscribe today via whatculture.com/Star Wars or search What Culture Star Wars on YouTube. And that was our look on 10 of the most powerful swords in comics history. Remember, you can find more content like this at whatculture.com/comics, and more of me on Twitter if you so desire at UinRuinsThings. That's all for now though, take care, maybe even treat yourself to one of the comics spotlighted above, and I will see you soon. Bye!